My guest this morning is Christian Cook. Christian Sandra-Elise Cook is from the suburbs of Detroit. At age 16, she graduated high school and then attended Columbia College, Chicago. Here she obtained a BA in public relations and discovered her depth as a woman and a writer by taking various creative writing courses and using the city of Chicago as her campus. After being accepted into a writing program in Paris, she rediscovered her passion for her first true love, which is writing. Paris was also Christian's first time traveling outside of the United States, and it opened her eyes to new experiences, a slower pace, and it made her question life as she understood it. Always curious, Christian discusses life, faith, and all the unexpected occurrences in between. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Reading Circle microphones. Christian Cook. Christian, good morning again.
Hi, good morning, Mark. How are you?
I am well, and I'm even better now that I got you here on the air because I was getting concerned. When I didn't see that phone light up at 6:55, I said, okay, something went wrong. So when you did call, I was thrilled to see the phone light up.
I am so sorry about that. It was the time difference. I had to remember, oh my gosh, I'm a few minutes late.
You know, and that's why I put the big ET, Eastern time. That's why whenever I'm communicating with folks on the email or text or whatever, because people always ask, why do you always put Eastern? Because I have to make sure, because I'm dealing with people from all different time zones. I'm dealing with people from time zones around the world, around the country. So I have to always distinguish that it is Eastern time so that wherever you're calling from, you have to compensate for whether it's an hour ahead, hour behind, whatever. But I totally get it. I understand. I was sharing prior to you coming on that, 20 years ago when the show started in my early years, I would literally, Christian, freak out when the guests didn't show up. But now I've done it so long now, I'm able to go to plan B, C, D, E, and F if needed. And I just I just roll on and rock on for the time that we be together and then get you, whoever it is, reschedule. But I mean, I've had all kinds of, I had one lady who was scheduled to be on and she was pregnant and she had gotten really bad morning sickness overnight or either went into labor or something. But she called me up and she was apologetic and apologizing profusely. But then she told me the story and I was like, now you really didn't expect me to be on there if you were having a baby, do you? But I'm glad to have you on here, and I'm so glad you got in touch because this is not your first time on the show. You've been on before. So I always give an open invitation back to my guests to say they can come on again when they have new work or something else that they'd like to share. So I tell you what, but we are going to do, because it's been a while since you're back on, we do want to catch the listening audience up in terms of kind of how everything got started. I just read your bio in terms of, your BA in public relations and going to Paris and being in Chicago and so forth and so on. So kind of and you graduated at 16. Because usually people graduate at 17, 18. So let's go back to that. How did that happen? How did you wind up graduating at 16?
So I graduated school early because I would say my mom was my first teacher. So she owned the daycare center and preschool that I went to. By the time I went to kindergarten, they thought I was too advanced to go to kindergarten by itself all day. So I did kindergarten during the first half of the school day and then first grade in the second half of the school day. And then by the time I got to fifth grade, I actually skipped a grade completely. So I went from fifth grade to seventh grade. And that's how, by the time high school came around, I graduated at 16.
Oh, so you got skipped. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Now you got skipped. All right. Yeah, I know a few kids that have gotten skipped. And so, okay, that makes sense to me because I was only 16. All right. So then have you always had the interest or the love for reading and writing, or was it just school across the board? Or how did you get into the whole public relations, writing, and all of that?
I would say from a very young age, education was always presented as being important, but I always leaned towards history and English classes being the ones I performed the best in, I had the most interest in. I was always reading. We always used to have reading log competitions in my class. I would try to read the most books so we can win the pizza party, just little things like that. But I just loved stories because I felt like I was somewhere else when I was reading them. And then over time, since I've read so many books and I understood the format, I wanted to tell stories of my own. So I would say I started exercising excessive storytelling skills probably in middle school, but dabbling in writing itself literally since like the early age of 3.
Okay, so that piece has always been there. Now, you mentioned the travel. I've been to Paris as well. I've seen the Eiffel Tower. I mean, I've actually been blessed to travel a lot of parts of the world, many parts of the world, and I'm always fascinated and interested and overjoyed whenever now, after been to the place, if I see it in movies or in books. Like when I see the Eiffel Tower now in a movie, I'm like, I've been there. Whenever I see Big Ben or if I see the palace, it's like, oh, I've been there. Whenever I see, like, you know, so was it like that for you when you got to Paris? How did that experience now impact your writing?
I would say I was just excited to get accepted into the writing program. That was something that I literally screamed, I remember, when I got in. And actually being there felt unreal for me. That was my first time out the country. I was 20 the first time I went to Paris. And ironically, Paris was the place I wanted to go to the most. So, like, the first time out the country, I literally got to go to my number one, like, place I wanted to go to. So that was really exciting. And just being in the program with people who had different writing styles, tasting different foods, just meeting different people who thought differently, spoke differently. The culture was really different. I had to adjust to that. The nightlife was interesting. Just literally every aspect of that trip made me feel different. So I began to write about different topics. I began to feel more comfortable with expressing myself as a writer who's had now a different experience instead of just my experiences that I obtained at school or at a party. Or I felt a little bit more mature. I felt like I had deeper insight only because I was literally taking myself out of the box that I've known and just letting myself feel creatively free.
Well, one of the things, as I'm working with children on a daily basis, and I'm constantly working with teachers and other administrators and folks above me, is one of the things I constantly say is it really is about exposure. In terms of being exposed to these different places and experiences. So I understand exactly, because I know in Paris, when you go overseas, even everything is far. Dinner time is 8 or 9 o'clock at night. I mean, it's like they eat very late over there. They don't eat at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. So that's different. Like you said, the lifestyle and the nights, depending on which country you go to, you have your different nuances. So you're absolutely right. So you had your BA in public relations. Were you working in that field, or do you work in that field?
So I did get a bachelor's in public relations, and I feel like I really navigated towards that field because there's a lot of language you use in public relations because
that's correct.
You're drafting messages all day. So one thing I'll never regret is getting a degree in PR, because I don't think my book, Growing in the Gray, would have seen as much exposure as it did without utilizing PR. A lot of people get confused about how do I gain exposure? How do I put myself out there? And me getting that background really early helps me to think of different creative ideas to really continuously promote the book, whether that be the traditional PR, whether that be in community relations events, just stopping by to different places saying hi, or creating different digital campaigns for it. That's something that I had to consistently do, and it was easy because I worked in the field for a decade. So coming up with different strategies to promote work, it's second nature for me.
Well, that's a good mix. Marketing, because I have a marketing background. My undergrad was marketing, because my undergrad is business administration, and then the next degree was communications, and the next degree after that was education. So you're absolutely right. When you start mixing the various majors or your experiences, your education, they do support each other. Now, Growing in the Gray was first, and then it was I Hate Gray, right?
No, I Hate Gray was first.
Oh, I Hate Gray was first. It's the other way around. Okay. So
yeah,
I Hate...
was, a shorter book of 7 essays that I wrote when I was 17 years old. And then Growing in the Gray got picked up by a traditional publisher, and it's been out. We got the 1-year anniversary on September 6th of this year.
So I Hate Gray is the one that we were talking about the last time you were here, and Growing in the Gray hadn't come out yet.
No, it did not come out yet.
When you were on the last time, Growing in the Gray had not come out. Now, it's interesting. Okay, first off, the genre that because you said the first one, I Hate Gray, is essays. Growing in the Gray, is that more essays, or is it more novel-like, or more...
It's a novel. It's a fiction novel.
It is a fiction novel. Okay, so how did you wind up going down the path of the genre that you're writing in? How did you get there?
It was pretty easy because Growing in the Gray, even though it was like 7 personal essays, they were written in story format. I did that on purpose because I had a lot of fiction writing classes at Columbia while I was there, and every week essays were due. So I would pretty much practice my essays in school first just to get a feel, a focus group of what people thought. Like, having that focus group really helped because you're getting feedback, you're surrounded by other writers, and a lot of people took a liking to my work. So I'm like, okay, they're all different people. They seem to either think this is funny, this is interesting, it's a bit ominous. And it gave me courage to publish the work on my own. Now, Growing in the Gray is something I decided to do because I felt like I had more to say. The other time around, I felt like I wasn't really battling myself. And what I mean by that specifically is I felt more comfortable just saying whatever I wanted in a way that I didn't feel like I was holding my own self back. So this was spring 2021 is when I started writing it, and then it got picked up at the end of November 2021 and came out September of 2022.
And that was, which one was that? That was Growing in the Gray.
Yeah.
Okay, so I Hate Gray. It's interesting because both of the titles deal with the color gray. Because in I Hate Gray, on the cover says, when it's not black and white, it's gray. Indecisiveness leads to anxiety. So was the first book, I Hate Gray, was that about kind of like cathartic for you in terms of being able to release? Like you just said, I'm able to get a voice. What was going on? I mean, what was your objective of I Hate Gray? Because I'm working my way up to Growing in the Gray. But what was your objective, or what did you want the readers to take away from I Hate Gray?
It's really interesting you say that because it was very cathartic for me. I knew I always wanted to be an author, and I didn't know what genre I would do, what story I would tell. And a lot of the times you hear writers say, write what you know first, because you're building your building blocks of writing skills. From there, you could probably feel more comfortable going and telling all types of different stories. But writing what you know is crucial because you're able to describe it very thoroughly. You know specifically what it feels like to go through these things. And anybody that is similar will be able to pretty much confirm. So you're being able to connect with your audience over this commonality that you share. And in the book I Hate Gray, the main character specifically, she's a little awkward, but she really has a lot of dreams, but her family doesn't really believe in them. They don't want her to move away. She's 100% dead set on starting her life over. How does she do that? How does she build a career in a new city? Dating for the first time. What does that look like in contemporary society with 2 young teens? I wanted to touch on a lot of the different topics of really coming of age stories that I've grown up reading and loved watching on TV.
So I'm intrigued by when it's not black and white, it's gray. And you're saying indecisiveness leads to anxiety. Now, that is true.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like, all right, go one way or the other, but just make up your mind, do something. And because whenever you're in that zone that you're talking about, it is. I mean, it is like you're carrying around this heavy backpack. So talk a little bit about that before I shift and go to, because you still stayed with that theme. And I want to see if the reason why is why I think it is, because it connects for me. It makes perfect sense to me. I want to see if your thinking behind it was that. So talk about, what was going on with the because listening audience, I'm looking at both book covers. I'm looking at both of the books, The I Hate Gray and The Growing in the Gray. And you did, I mean, I could tell you have a marketing and a PR background because you sent subliminal messaging through your color choice, through your wording, so forth and so on. But talk to me a little bit about I Hate Gray, and then we're going to work our way into Growing in the Gray.
So I used the tagline for I Hate Gray because I thought it was very straightforward. You would kind of understand, like, this character has a very hard time with decision making, which really does fuel her anxiety for her life choices. Well, the main character in the book, she feels like she almost has to go one way in life. So she has a lot of pressure behind her family, stay at home, work in the family business, but she doesn't want to do that. And she feels a little bad about the fact that she does want to go to art school, that they have to pay for it. It's more expensive than she thought it would be. And how does she kind of apologize for sticking to her dream, but kind of feel like she is like plummeting her family financially because of a decision that she thinks will really end up paying off in the long run. That's the like major decision we have there. Then we have just like her, I would say, like on a smaller scale of decision making, she still has problems making the right decision too, because she's almost a perfectionist in a sense, where she's like, well, if I do this, like she tries to think like 8 steps ahead and play the whole scenario out in her head instead of just going kind of like one step at a time, accepting things as they are. But when you don't feel like you have that much room for error, you almost feel like you can't make a mistake at all, or your life is going to like go completely downhill.
I'm sitting here as I'm trying to think. There was this series that I watched on Netflix last year, and it was a very good series, and the storyline was very similar to what you just described in terms of the girl wanting to go to art school because she goes to Italy. And I'm trying to think of the series because she marries Lino. She meets somebody in Italy and marries him, but she was going through that same struggle. And it'll come to me, or either I'll look it up as I'm talking to you. But
is it Eat, Pray, Love?
Is it what?
Eat, Pray, Love.
No, it wasn't Eat, Pray, Love, and I've read that book before too. It'll come to me. Like I said, either I'll find it on just that I saw it. It was a very good series. Matter of fact, it was very tear-jerking. And so it'll come to me as we're talking. But when you said that, immediately my mind went back to watching this particular show, and the girl had played it, and it's like all of these things I got to come back to my memory now, and if either her name, the actress name comes, or the plot comes, I'll find it. But it sounded very similar to the series that I watched last year on Netflix. So all right, so that whets the appetite because we're not going to give the whole book away, but I can see where it's going. Now, that particular cover, listening audience, is in black and white. I hate a very definitive statement. I hate gray.
I came up with that title when I was 17, and it was just like the best thing I could do at the time. Now, when I hear it, I do think it's kind of funny. That's just like a personal thing for me, though.
It's very strong. I mean, first off, anytime you use the word, that's it, from scratch. That's the name. I knew it would come up. It was From Scratch. That was the series title, From Scratch, and
that sounds interesting.
It's very good. And I got to get the girl's name, the actress's name, but it did come up whenever I put in. I remembered the husband's name that was in. His name was Lino, so when I put in Lino in Netflix, it came up. From Scratch. That was the name of the series, And it was set in Italy, in Florence, and so if you look it up, you'll find it. But exactly what you described about the indecisiveness, or I want to do art school versus what my parents want me to do, is very similar. If you look at that movie, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. If you go to Netflix and put in From Scratch, if it's still available, you'll see what I'm talking about. But what I'm going back to what I was saying in terms of when you use, anytime anybody uses the word hate, that's very strong. The word hate is very strong. So the fact that you're saying, I hate gray, it sounds like what you're saying is, I want it either one way or the other. I want, make a decision. That's
the point. I'm so glad that you put that together. And I essentially titled it that for that specific reason. Whereas it's like she literally hates being in every single situation she's in the book. She's pretty much literally trying to go through it. And she's just like, well, I still don't see one side or the other as an answer, so I have to keep going through in the middle, in the in-between. And it's just it's extremely stressful for her.
And again, and Zoe Saldana, that's who I was like, which actress? But it was Zoe Saldana. She was the one. That's the character you're describing was the Zoe Saldana character in From Scratch. She was the one.
I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah, check it out. And you'll see. You'll, like, when you start watching it, you're going to be like, oh, my God, I think I wrote the screenplay for this. But it's Zoe Saldana, and she's going through that struggle that you're describing. Her family thinks she's crazy because they want her to, her father is like an attorney. Her father is like this big, powerful attorney in Texas, and he wants her to go into, like, just like you were describing, into the family business or whatever, and she doesn't want to do that. She wants to go draw. She wants to study art, and she leaves and she goes to Italy, where she now meets this gentleman, Lino, and, it goes on from there. But it's, if you have Netflix or whatever, or if it's moved on beyond it into somewhere else, check it out. But it's called From Scratch, From Scratch. Scratch. And going back to, again, the fact that your covers are black and white, and that the statement is different. I keep repeating that because I'm going somewhere with the fact that the statement was so definitive, because now you went from I hate gray to your second book, which is Growing in the Gray. So I hate gray, black and white cover, Growing in the Gray, fuchsia, gray, cloudy looking. Look like either a Chicago or a New York backdrop in terms of the buildings and everything. So what caused, because the fact that you used that, I'm a wordsmith, by the way, I hang on words. The fact that you went from I hate to growing, that for me, it gives me that shift took place.
Yes, there was a major internal shift between I Hate Gray being written at 17 and me starting writing Growing in the Gray at 23. I wanted to almost look at my former years with more perspective. As a teenager, you just kind of hate everything. That's what you either love something, you hate it, you like it, whatever it is, but you kind of just compartmentalize everything in that way. By the time I was a few years out of college, I was able to look at things with a more mature perspective and really understood how much I grew through those uncertain times. So even though as a teenager I hated it, by the time I was 23, I was able to look back and say, you know what, I was really growing in the in-between. I was growing when I didn't know the right or wrong answer. I was growing by even just throwing myself out there and trying something new. And even though it felt uncomfortable, I was able to grow through it. That was the whole point. And finally, towards the end of the book, you see the character feel way more confident, way more strong about her decision-making. She's excited for a sophomore year to really, leave the past of all the tumultuous boy drama, not really feeling like she fit in with anybody at the school. She almost gives herself, this internal makeover over the summer. And now I'm writing the sophomore year installment, and she's kind of going in guns blazing. She has connections now. She's meeting new people. You see her go from being this very introverted character who thought way too much to, really she's still very type A, but she is thinking less and doing more, and now her life is flourishing.
So again, the growing part is key. That word growing is key. And it's a nice connection because, like I said, it showed that you move. And in schools, we call this, and in education, they called it fixed mindset versus growth mindset. In fixed mindset, it's kind of like what you did on the first book. I hate gray. Like in other words, I'm not going to get beyond this gray. I'm always going to be gray. I hate gray. Gray is as far as it can go. So But when you get to the next book, that is a growth mindset, and that is, you know what? Whatever comes up, we're going to use that for our growth. A lot of the things. This is the thing, and this is what takes. I'll show you, I'm a wordsmith. This is the thing about if you. And I'm not a gardener, even though I do have a green thumb in terms of plants in the house and all that kind of good stuff, but. For those that, have gardens or those who plant or this, that, and the other, they usually put down some kind of fertilizer. And fertilizer is made from manure. And the plants grow really well whenever you put fertilizer down. And fertilizer is made out of manure, and yet the plants grow really well. And what I'm saying with that is a lot of times we have to go through really bad experiences to get the growth.
That's true, and it's sad. It's sad, and it's painful.
It is, but that's where the most growth comes from. It's kind of like for those that work out, that whole saying of no pain, no gain. And trust me when I tell you, I do not like bad experiences. I really don't. But the truth of the matter is none of us are going to be able to get around at some point in life having some kind of bad experience one way or the other. That's why I'm really intrigued with your going from hate to growing, because that is a very important shift.
And it's been the only thing that has really, honestly, kept me together through my uncertain times is the mind shift within itself. Really working this past year, actually, I'm going to get a little bit more personal. I have been working on giving myself an internal makeover. I feel like I had a lot of self-sabotaging thought patterns. I felt like I was the one holding myself back from being able to fully receive the type of life that I've wanted, because your thoughts fuel your decisions. And I never considered myself to be a positive person or a negative person, actually. I just kind of always accepted things for what they were. But if you have new goals, you kind of do have to consistently think of something as this is going to work. This is, if I keep continuing down this path, it will produce a positive outcome, instead of thinking about things as we humans like to call them, as realistic.
Right.
That has been, I started this literally, I've been working on it all year. So literally since the day we said Happy New Year to now, I decided I was going to work on my mind, really learning what to focus on what to ignore, not being so distracted. I've been incorporating less screen time throughout my day because, your phone will tell you, like, how many hours you're on your phone per day, per average. And working in PR and just, like, always being on, I had to kind of take a break from the industry for a while. I put my job at the top of the year to really focus on, is this something that I really want to do? I had to think about, like, all the toxic environments I was in just due to the job that I had. I was trying to really, like, dump off everything that I felt like didn't match this new vision I had for my life. But I won't, by the time I get whatever I was, like, working to get, in order to really appreciate something or really, like, be happy when you're receiving it, you have to be right from within.
Correct.
And I didn't want to take any of those things with me because they were really ruining me, even though they were my external life choices, like my job, the people I was hanging around. But that began to seep into my inside, and I can tell, I'm like, I don't even feel like the same person. I cut off a lot of friends this year, or people who I thought were my friends. So this year has been really interesting for me as I've been rebuilding myself from the inside out.
Well, you know what? First off, what you've said is very profound, but it's simple. And you're absolutely right. The within is more important than the outside, the inside, and most people don't get that. And exactly what you were saying that you're doing, because this, and I always talk in pictures and metaphors and allegories and stories and parables, so forth and so on, because I like people to understand and see exactly what it is that I'm talking about. When a plane, if it needs to do an emergency landing or something goes wrong and it has to land in an emergency, in many instances has to offload fuel. They have to, before they can land, they have to drop a certain amount of pounds of fuel off of that plane. Otherwise, if they do land safely, the plane is still going to crash because it's too heavy. They're gonna get on the runway. They're not gonna be able to stop. They're not gonna be able to slow down because they're too heavy. So they have to literally go out and they have to let fuel out of the jet. They usually go out somewhere over the ocean or somewhere. They get over there and they start dumping fuel out of the plane to lighten it. Exactly what you said. In order for them to land, they have to be light. They cannot land heavy. Same thing happens for us as humans. In order for us to move forward and to grow, as you're saying, we have to let some stuff go. Now, for me, I struggle with letting things and people and relationships and all this go. I really do struggle with that. But you know what? It's needed. It's not. Interesting.
But it's needed.
It is. You have to do it. I'm going to go back because I always start to show off. It's funny you were talking about you haven't been a positive or a negative, but it really is what our words say. And I constantly keep things along the lines of, things are working out for me, all is well, everything is all right. Matter of fact, the opening for the show at 6 o'clock, the song I've started using is a song by Todd Delaney called It's Working. And what he says in that song is working out for me. And this morning, and I'm going to go back to it because we're having this discussion, and a lot of times I'm always grateful that things line up so well, and I know that's divine providence that it does. But Iyanla Vanzant for today, for the reading that I said today, whenever I opened up the show, she talks about exactly what you just talked about. And I'm going to read it again. Listening audience, if you heard it again, please bear with me. But I'm reading this one now for Christian. For today, September 16th, I experience and express the power of trust because I am willing to do the work I need to do to learn more about myself. When you find yourself in another relationship with another person doing the same things, feeling the same ways you did in other relationships, you are working on unfinished business. This means there is something you need to see about yourself, or there is something you need to learn about yourself that has nothing to do with whom you are with. The things you are about to discover about yourself will help you rewrite your script. The fact of the matter is that most people do not have many relationships. They have one relationship with many people. The same issues and challenges that you have in one relationship are the same issues and challenges you have in all relationships. The more relationships you are involved in, the deeper you go in terms of identifying your core issue, the issue that keeps attracting opportunities for you to get clear. Once the core issue is resolved, once you understand why you do what you do in relationships, you can choose to change. As you change your approach, your behavior changes. Once you change your behavior, you heal your wounds, fears, false expectations, and judgments. Should you find that you are arguing with your mate, your mother, or your best friend, if you discover that you are in conflict with your co-workers and other shoppers in the supermarket, take a hint. There is something on the center stage of your life that requires attention. Until today, you may have thought that every relationship in your life was different from the other relationships. Just for today, look for the common trouble spots and common experiences in all of your relationships. Then examine yourself and your common complaints. Today, I'm devoted to examining the role I play in the difficulties of all of my relationships. Now, that's what I read this morning at 6 o'clock. And now we come along as I'm discussing with you, and you're saying you're doing exactly what Iyanla was talking about.
That is insane. And then that entire passage was packed with a lot of heat. It was a lot to take in there. It was just truth after truth after truth, like all the way from the top to the bottom.
I cannot tell you how many times on the morning that I read as I open up the show, how it fits or matches something, either a conversation I have or something that's going on with my life, or when I read from two different books, how they line up. And you're absolutely right. It is a lot of times I will read it and say, whew, she must have wrote that one for me. And but you're absolutely right. And it's exactly right. We have to work on the within. And once you get the within right, the outside gets right.
They change together. I've seen so many different opportunities come my way after, like, quitting my job. I saw how, like, a lot of people would watch me but not necessarily root for me. Like, I have old coworkers consistently checking my LinkedIn profile or messaging me, and I'm like, we didn't like each other while we were there. I don't know why this is extending, like you're trying to extend the relationship past this point. But it's just like people being nosy, like, oh, I wonder if she's like going to end up like
that's exactly what it is.
Leaving here, because that's what people think. And I'm like, actually, no, I'm still successful. Thank you so much for checking. I've had so many negative experiences, I would say, like, within the past 2 years, and I have...
Ooh, you ain't by yourself. That's two of us there, dear.
To change things. I'm like, I woke up one day and decided, like, this was not the life that I said I wanted.
Right.
Long term. Now, of course, like, I didn't really like my job at one point. And I loved my friends and, like, who I was dating at the time. Like, everything just seemed to match. And then one day it didn't. And I'm like, maybe I'm evolving and I'm changing.
Right.
And you are. And I was even discussing with my sister last night. Sometimes the version of you people recognize is the version that you were. As you continue to, like, change and work on yourself, if they can't recognize that version of you, your spirit is now fighting their spirit.
Correct. And see,
now
go ahead.
The spirits are at war with each other because they want you to remain the way you were while you are growing and becoming more light.
Well, see, this is why, for me, and I don't know if you did this consciously or subconsciously, but the fact that you went from a black and white cover to a very colorful color tells me that it's almost like you went from death to life, or you went from not growing to growing. I don't know if you did that by design or not, but the two covers, when you put them side by side, now when people buy the books, they may not see them side by side, but if you look at them side by side the way I am, there's a message there. Like I said, there's a message in the color choice on your covers. There's a message, because this is what your second book says when you say growing anyway, because your first book said, I hate the gray. So usually people that hate something, they want it to go away. And what your second book is saying, no, the gray didn't go away. Even though I hated it, it didn't go away, but I'm working my way through it.
That's exactly what the cover, I believe, represents too. Where, yes, there was some gray there, but we also have some light moments. There was some rain, because that is just life. And I feel like when people see bad things happening, they have this idea, and I would say I had it too when I was younger, where if there was a bad moment, the bad moment now got labeled as a bad day. Or if I had a few bad days out of the week, now I had a terrible week, and then you have a few terrible weeks, you think you have a terrible life. And that's not really true. There is glimmers every single day where even if the whole day wasn't great, I now will write a list of just different things that I like.
Right. That's right.
Like, oh, I got a discount on my matcha latte. I was able to meditate today. I sprayed my favorite perfume on myself before I walked out the door. Those little glimmers when life isn't, like, going your way will, like, help you along the way, just to kind of keep some things in perspective.
You're absolutely right. Because, see, another way of saying that is, and I know a lot of recommendation is that you keep a gratitude journal. And that is to do exactly what you just said, except for you write it down. Like each day on the day, you write down what you were thankful for during that day. And it did not have to be or does not have to be monumental. People think, when you start talking something to be thankful for, that it has to be mountainous. No, it can be tiny. As you just said, I sprayed my favorite perfume on. You know what? Like for me, it's soon. I mean, the first thought and words that come out my mouth as I rise in the morning is thank you, God, because it's another day. I woke up because there were some people who went to sleep last night, didn't wake up this morning. So I am grateful just the fact that I opened my eyes and I can still move my limbs and get out of bed, so forth and so on. But it does not have to be something big. One of the songs is it's called All Right. John P. Key is in there, and the Tennessee State Marching Band is in there. But one of the things he says in this song, he's thankful that his car was still outside. He's thankful when he got in the shower, just that his water was working when he got in the shower. I mean, little things.
And it is the little things end up stacking up over time. Like these habits that I've been building this year.
Right.
I feel much more stronger now than I do at the start of the year. I feel like I feel like I'm able to work through my thoughts instead of just thinking about the negative for too long and then spiraling into this negative motion of now we have one negative thought that snowballed into 50 in the course of 10 minutes. Now I'm able to stop those negative thoughts in their tracks and see what I can do. If I could do anything at all to bring any light into this situation, just fixing my mind, and especially because if I've had the same thought patterns for so many years,
right,
that's going to take a long time to feel like, I would say not even take a long time, it would be a consistent task. I like to think of myself as more like a project. A project sometimes is ongoing. You hear people like, well, this took 10 years to make, or this took all these years to make. But each year and all those months in between, they were building and building, and you get this final product. I like to think of myself as more of a project because you're consistently growing. You're consistently changing. And with a task, it's kind of like this check off the list and now it's done. But I don't want to think of myself or like the decisions I make in my life like a check off the list. Like life is not this script or checklist or to-do list. Like I want to feel like I'm experiencing things. I really want my experiences to be something I hold on to. Because like you said, like I skipped grades, like my whole life I feel like has been on this fast track where if you ask me something just from a few years ago, I have to think for a long time, like all of this was a blur. I can barely remember. Like I'm now almost obsessed with taking my time with things.
Right. Have you ever heard of mindfulness?
Yes, mindfulness.
Okay, so that's exactly what mindfulness is all about. Mindfulness is about stopping, listening, like what sounds are going on around you right now, you know, really slowing down, really looking at something. When you're eating, really tasting the food, not just chomping it down. I mean, mindfulness really is a process of really kind of doing exactly what you're doing, slowing things down. I was in a workshop years ago, and one of the slogans in that workshop was, we're either doing one of two things in life. We're either growing or dying. Anything that's not growing is dying.
That's so sharp.
That was the upshot of the workshop. His name was Bob, and I forget the last name because he's dead now. He passed away. I remember when Bob passed away. But that was his workshop was you're either growing or you're dying. That's why when I looked at the black and white or the gray cover, it's kind of like that kind of represents, and it's not meant to be that way, but if I look at them side by side and I juxtapose them, one looks like dying, one looks like growing. The fuchsia and gray and the backdrop of the city or whatever, that looks like life to me. The other one looks like you're going the other way.
And I feel like based off of the adjustments I made to the character, you are exactly right. Like she just was always complaining about situations, but not even complaining, because teenagers complain all the time, but they're more like expressing themselves. I feel like she's just very expressive because she is going through all these bad things, and she doesn't really know how to navigate them.
Right.
And growing in the gray, I wanted to make her expressing herself, but like still pushing towards like trying to change things in a way, because out of all this mindfulness and taking more heed to my thoughts, that comes with how I begin to actually move in my life. How do my actions change based off my thoughts? The thoughts are the start, because if you don't fix that first, the actions won't follow.
Well, I'll tell you what, I heard you reference, because my next question is going to be like, what's next? And I thought I heard you reference something about the sophomore year. Is Growing in the Gray going to be a series?
Yes, it's going to be a series that follows Krista Clark through her college journey.
Okay.
So we had Growing in the Gray. I played with a lot of time elements in this book. Like, I incorporated a lot of flashbacks because it takes course over one summer, where it's providing the flashbacks to some pretty monumental moments of her freshman year of college. And over the summer, she's kind of preparing for, I'm like, I went through all of that craziness. Sophomore year is coming. I know exactly how I want to take on the year. So we see her in sophomore year now, almost in a way, trying to social climb a little bit. She feels like she's found her footing. She's ready to kind of like take over the campus, also really get involved in the art gallery world, because that's where she wants to be. She wants to be an art curator. So we kind of see some drama brewing there that I foreshadowed in Growing in the Gray. It's been a lot of fun writing this one. We have some new characters. You kind of see old characters go away. Some of the old characters go away as she grows. As we say, like, certain people just kind of get cut out your life. And it just kind of happens through a series of life changes.
It's interesting because this wonderful thing called Google that did not exist whenever I was little, but I just go in and start keywording some stuff. And there's actually a book by that title. It's not by the person that I had the workshop with, but the book is, If You're Not Growing, You're Dying. 7 Habits for Thriving in Your Faith, Relationships, and Work. And the author of that book is John, Jonbeaty. I'll have to check that out a little bit later. But listen to the audience, if you just joined me, I hope you've been with me since 6, certainly since 7. My guest this morning is Christian Cook, and we're talking about 2 of her works that are already released, and now we were just talking about the upcoming ones. But her first book was I Hate Gray, and the second book was Growing in the Gray, and Growing in the Gray, as she just said, is going to become a series. So that's who my guest is this morning. We're about coming towards the end of the interview. So where do you see series going year by year, like sophomore year, junior year, senior year, or kind of like, what are your thoughts, or do you have any thoughts about where it's going?
I'm taking it one step at a time, but I would like each book to be, like you said, the sophomore book, the junior book, and the senior book.
All right. Well, you know what, Christian, we're at the point now where I'm going to shut the mic off for a couple of minutes, and you are going to have the opportunity to promote. You can promote, how the folks can get in touch with you, websites, anything. The only thing, Christian, you cannot say is a dollar amount. Anything short of the dollar amount, you can shout out who you want, anything, and I'm recording it, so I'll get the links to you. You can share them with whoever you'd like, but at this point, I'm going to turn the mic off, and you get a chance to do your thing, because you're in PR anyway, so you know how to promote. I'm going to let you promote. So I'm taking the mic off. It's yours.
All right. Thank you, Mark. So you can buy I Hate Gray and Growing in the Gray on BarnesandNoble.com or Amazon.com and Target.com. Growing in the Gray is available there. And you can also visit my website, craftedbychristian.com, to read my monthly blog posts and catch up with any updates, and also sign up for my newsletter directly on the site. Thank you.
Oh, that was short and sweet. So, okay. So I tell you what, I thank you so much for joining me this morning. It turned out to be very well. See, that's what I say. I used to going back to what you were talking about, like I said, years ago, that would have freaked me out. It didn't this morning, and it worked out well. Everything is always working out for me. And it worked out just as well if you'd have called in at 6:55.
Thank you, Mark, for still having me. And that just comes with you being in the industry for a long time. When you do something for a longer period of time, you build that confidence, and you're not freaking out as you would have in the beginning of your career. You know what?
You're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. So have a wonderfully blessed day. Again, her 2 books are I Hate Gray. When it's not black and white, it's gray. Indecisiveness leads to anxiety. And then the second book is Growing in the Gray. So, like I said earlier, the gray didn't go away. It's just that there was a different perspective. Like she just said about me being in the industry longer. It was a different perspective. You started growing in it instead of hating it. All right. Thank you so much. I was certainly, like I said, I think I have. I Hate Gray. I think I downloaded that one, but now I'll download the other one, Growing in the Gray. I'll download that on my Kindle as well. All right.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care. Have a wonderful, blessed day.
You too, Mark.
Thanks. Take care.